We expect our police officers to act in ways that accord with the training that we give them, and today we're going to see that not happen. Hi everyone, welcome to today's really head-shaking badge cam lesson. I am your host as always, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from Chicago, Illinois.
Palm pepper spray is next generation OC spray. It's hot at 1.4% major capsaicinoids, and its modular design means you can customize it exactly to you. 3 different setups, lots of different color combinations. You can make it exactly as you like. And the flip top safety prevents accidental discharges. It's 10 to 12 foot range and 25 half-second blasts. Make sure that you can keep that long range eye poke at long range. I trust Palm OC and I recommend it for everyone for self-defense.
We're on this train car in Chicago. The guy here that's walking up that has the black jacket with the red has walked between cars. That is against the Chicago Transit Authority rules. So this transit officer goes, hey, you gotta step off so that we can talk to you here. And because what you've done is illegal, subject to up to a $300 fine and a bunch of other stuff. Links are in the description. So he gets off. There's another officer there as well. And they're gonna tell him, they're gonna hook him up. They're gonna give him a ticket for what he's done walking between cars. Though apparently that's a pretty common practice in Chicago. You know, we did the first watch on this one and a lot of people commented that that does happen. So what you're gonna watch happen here is then he is gonna try to pull away from these officers, and the male officer in particular is not going to have it. So he is gonna grab a hold of the guy and then they're gonna start pulling him away from the train tracks, and it's gonna end up in a pretty physical confrontation here. Now we do have cell phone footage from a bystander. Neither of these officers are wearing badge cams, but we do have cell phone footage from a bystander of the physical altercation that ensues. So let's listen in on what we see there from this significant, empty-handed fight.
Let my cuff go. Give me your hand. Don't see Wi-Fi, man.
I didn't do nothing to you.
7-3 faster.
I didn't do nothing to you.
7-3 faster.
I don't want to punch. I don't want to.
7-3. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Stop trying to.
Okay.
7353. Stop! Stop resisting! Stop resisting! Stop resisting! Stop resisting! Stop! Stop resisting! Stop resisting! Stop!
Stop resisting.
Stop! Stop resisting! Shoot him!
Stop. Put your fucking hands there. Put your fucking, give him your hands. Give him your hands. Give him your hands.
Get out! Get out!
After the female officer does her best RoboCop impression and shoots him in the pee-pee, he runs off and she shoots him right in the butt a second time. So as he's running up the escalator, she shot him again a second time. That then he finally went down and they took him into custody. They did initially charge this guy with a couple of minor charges. The Chicago chief of police actually asked the prosecutor to drop those charges. The prosecutor did drop those charges. The chief of police then recommended both these officers be fired for what happened here this day. The female officer ended up being charged with attempted murder and malfeasance of duty. It went to a bench trial and she was found not guilty at that trial. And so no criminal charges ended up sticking. Both these officers faced the disciplinary hearings. The female officer resigned her position the day before, so she wasn't disciplined. The male officer was suspended for a year without pay. The dude here whose big problem was walking between cars of the transit, system, ended up not facing any charges. He did live. He was shot a couple times, had a long road to recovery. I haven't heard anything about a civil case yet, but my guess is homie's going to get paid for this one. You know, Mike, I really think that there's some staffing and hiring stuff that goes into this because so many officers are fleeing these big city departments because of stuff like this.
Yep, and it's going to continue if we don't treat our cops better.
I gotta say, Mike, the whole beginning of this one here just kind of makes my butt itch. I'm a libertarian at heart, man. And jamming people up for basically nothing, for something that's malum prohibitum, I just don't like.
Okay, so folks, buckle up. If you already watched our first watch of this, you're going to hear a lot of the same things here. But something I want to add to what we said the other day, John, for sure, is look, if you're doing these sorts of stops, like if it's a common problem, we even had some, I think, former transit law enforcement comment on that video to that effect. If you're doing these sorts of stops, first of all, get the person away from those tracks as soon as humanly possible. You can see during this initial little tussle right here, there was a real possibility that he was going to pull one of them onto the tracks possibly, or somebody just fall onto them during the midst of that tussle. But get them away from the tracks. And let's start with something like, have you ever been stopped for this before? No? Okay. Well, you're not going to get a ticket today, so I'll let you know that. I'm just going to give you a warning and move on from there. I think the first offense for something like this should be just that, a warning. We'll check your ID. Now your name's in there. If you do it again, you might get a ticket, whatever. But this sort of overzealous enforcement of stuff like walking between train cars, to me, is a little silly, and the government and the police, I think, have better things to do.
I also want to say here very clearly, though, that our guy here who ended up breaking the law, listen, if you're going to walk between those train cars, you know that that's illegal if you ride that train. So if you get jammed up for it, take your ticket, move on, right? If he decides he doesn't want to fight these cops, we don't have this problem, all right? So he bears some responsibility that he put the quarter in the jukebox here that started the thing running. I'm not saying he deserved to be shot, because I don't think he did, but listen, just take your stupid ticket. Now, from the officer's perspective, again, what a miserable failure of defensive tactics here. What a miserable inability to have some empty-handed skills. I mean, like 6 months of jiu-jitsu would be all it would take to know how to turn this guy over, flatten him out, and get him into cuffs. And quite frankly, the female cop kind of standing there and doing nothing and like bringing handcuffs to this fight that don't need to be there. I just want to bang my head on the desk, Mike.
Yeah, in my mind, I was screaming. I can't tell if he's face down or face up in this position, but drag him out of that corner by his arms, you know, and get him in a position of disadvantage and place him into custody. This wasn't even that hard of a thing to do. Now, it is hard to get someone into custody. He doesn't want to go into custody. I'll grant you that. But there's two of you. This guy doesn't appear to be an Olympian. He's not a triathlete, you know. It seems to me that this should have been a lot quicker and a lot easier. But like you said, John, I just see her sort of ineffectually standing over this guy. That bent at the waist position with your legs straight, there's no power in that whatsoever. That's not a good position to do anything from as far as your defensive tactics go or your arrest techniques. And I think you mentioned jiu-jitsu, John. I want to say this real quick. Just doing regular arrest techniques that teach you in the academy would have handled this. You didn't even need anything besides that.
And I also want to say, look at all these Chicagoans just walking by. Listen, even if you hate the cops and they're struggling, maybe ask, officer, do you need some help? Can I help you at all, officer? Yeah, you know, take this taser and get it the heck out of here or whatever. But just walking by and not helping, hey, even if you hate the cops, you want this guy to get into custody so he doesn't get shot. And you know, I'm not saying the cops are going to accept your help, but I certainly think, again, offering to help when you see them struggling like this is the right thing to do for any citizen, whether you're pro-police or anti-police, because it keeps people from getting shot.
Yeah, that's a great point. So just to reiterate what John just said, so if you're not a big fan of the police, if you see them struggling with someone like this, understand that encounter could end up in some sort of violence, potential deadly force. And if nothing else, you know, hey, let the police know you're there. Let them know you're there and you're witnessing what they're doing. If nothing else, maybe that'll keep, I don't know if these guys had body cams. I don't think they did. And just let them know, hey, I'm watching. I'll help you if you want. But at the very least, give them the idea that, look, there's someone paying attention to what you're doing. Not that I think that would have made all that much of a difference in this case, John, because her eventual actions here with her firearm are so bizarre and inexplicable and just mind-blowing to me as a retired law enforcement officer that I can't even describe it effectively.
And she clearly has no idea how to use the OC spray that she's got in her hand right now. She's clearly struggling with it, clearly doesn't know what to do with the stupid thing. And this is just a total failure of her to take on board training. I don't know if they didn't train her with that OC spray or what, but it did finally have its effect. Once she was able to get it out of the canister and on the guy's face, you can see it actually did what it was supposed to do. Now, in her criminal trial, she said that her partner was sprayed and that, you know, he was incapacitated, and so she did what she had to do to save her own life, that she felt that this guy was going to kill her. I'm going to say that I think that the video really belies that, and I don't know how she got away with this, quite frankly. I don't know how she escaped criminal charges from this one, because as everything goes, you watch her right here, she chooses to draw her firearm, and look at what's going on. First of all, her partner is still in the fight, isn't showing any significant effects from OC spray. Secondly, the guy is showing some significant effects. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, my hands didn't do anything, the OC spray didn't do anything, the tasers didn't do anything, so now I gotta go to my gun. No, you gotta have some justification why the use of deadly force is imminent, and I just don't see it here.
A couple things. First of all, OC spray, as John, I know you know this, but for the benefit of our viewers, OC spray is not an instantaneous thing. It's not like a taser where you turn it on and the person is disabled. OC spray takes a moment, not very long, right? But it takes a second for that, the actual powder, for the accelerant. What's the word I'm looking for here, John?
The active ingredient, the oleoresin capsicum.
Yeah, there you go. I used to teach this, I swear to God, to dry out enough to affect the mucous membranes, to affect the eyeball and the tear ducts and everything else. It takes just a second. So this is a point at which both of them could have probably let go of this guy and backed up a couple of feet and let this sink in, you know what I mean, and then reassess. I think a lot of law enforcement officers get in close and it's like, well, I've gained this ground, I'm going to hold it. Sometimes that's the right thing to do. Sometimes, you know, disengaging, at least temporarily, and reassessing is the right thing to do. Now, as far as her claim, I think you said she claimed she felt her partner was disabled. She may have perceived that. I don't know. I'm not gonna accuse her of lying here. But from what I'm looking at right now, it looks like you said, like the bad guy, quote unquote bad guy, the guy who walked between two cars, has having some effect from the OC spray, which is good. That's what we wanted it to do. And the partner, while he may have gotten a mild exposure, does not appear to be anywhere near out of the fight, and that's critical because if he's not out of the fight, one of her justifications possibly for using deadly force is, well, he overpowered my partner. Now my partner's got pepper spray in his eyes, and now basically I'm alone with this guy for all intents and purposes, and he was bigger than me and he's very resistive, and I felt like if I didn't shoot him, you know, XYZ, then he was going to overpower me and I was going to die, or whatever. And none of that stuff, clearly none of that stuff is true based on this very clear video evidence. The male officer, the male half, continues to fight even after the shot rings out. So I would give $100 to know what's going through her partner's mind in this moment, because I'm sure it was like, what the hell is going on?
And listen, I mean, I love what you said earlier about backing up a second and letting the OC spray kind of breathe a minute and let it do what it's doing. Look at what it's doing to him. This guy's got his hand on over his eyes. He's bent over. He's not assaulting either officer. And so this is the point here, a half second before she shoots. So this would be the place that she made a decision to shoot if she intentionally shot the guy. For what purpose would she have shot him here? I think, again, oh, I've got to get him into custody. I've got to get him into custody is not a basis for the use of deadly force by a police officer. It's not. So she shoots him right here, and I would have at first guessed that this was a negligent discharge here because, again, she shot him in the pelvis. I'm not going to say she shot him in the actual groin, but shot him in the pelvis, which isn't going to do as good a job of incapacitating. It's just as deadly, though. And to what stimulus? And you know, if you go read the news story, the judge in the bench trial said that this guy proved to be an utterly non-credible witness. He lied, perjured himself on the stand about a couple things. So he's a jerk too, and all those things. But it still doesn't justify what was done here. And I'm gobsmacked that she wasn't convicted criminally of this. And I think that erodes our trust in law enforcement, Mike.
Yeah, and I know we have a large contingent of our viewers, and thank you, by the way, for watching. We appreciate it. Who, whenever we have a video like this, they are always wanting to point out that, yeah, well, this guy resisted. This guy didn't do what they told him to do. Therefore, you know, he did A, therefore they did B. Look, sure, as John said at the outset of this video, he put the quarter in the jukebox, but the end of that song should not have ended with a bang. It should have ended with him, you know, going to jail for resisting arrest and getting his silly little, you know, train ticket or whatever. It's 3 times, I think, in the 2.5 years I've worked for ASP have I been genuinely shocked at the outcome of a video. And this is one of those times, for sure. When that shot broke, when John and I first watched it, I was absolutely floored at what I saw. Was it a negligent discharge, as John said? That's a possibility. We'll never know. I would love to know what she claimed it was. I would love to know if she said, yeah, I shot him intentionally or not. But
well, she did make the case that she shot him intentionally. Now, as we go up the escalator here, she shoots him again and hits him in the behind. She literally hits him in the glutes. And as he comes up and is running off, we got to have just a second here. This second shot is a discrete shot. It's taken 5 or 6 seconds after the first shot. And listen, under the well-established Tennessee versus Garner standard, I mean, that standard has been since the 80s. An officer is only justified to use deadly force to apprehend a fleeing felon to the extent that a fleeing felon represents either a threat of death or great bodily harm to the officer or a threat of death or great bodily harm to the community. I see zero reason why this guy is an active threat of death to anybody in the community, an active threat of great bodily harm. He is purely and only running away. And this fails the standard of Tennessee versus Garner.
100%. I was praying in the back of my mind when we first saw this, when we first previewed this video, that there was a knife in his hand or something that, you know, that we couldn't see in the video, and there just wasn't. And shooting him as he's attempting to flee. And by the way, I can't blame him for attempting to flee at this moment. He's just been shot without legal justification. The second shot is just so over the top. And I don't want to harp on it. No, I do want to harp on it. The fact that regardless of the credibility of the, well, I'll call him a victim in this case, the shootee, regardless of his credibility in court, this videotape kind of speaks for itself. And unless she had something to say that directly contradicted what we just saw, and it doesn't sound like she did, other than the thing about her partner, then I have no idea why she's not in prison, like in prison for attempted murder. I have no idea. This is absolutely crazy.
Now, listen, does the male officer bear the same punishment and the same culpability as the female officer? No, I don't think he does. He didn't make those decisions. I think that he definitely bears his own problems here, but not as much as the female officer does. He did get suspended for an entire year for his lack of skills here and his inappropriate use of force here, when I think that is probably appropriate too. As far as the civil trial, and I am sure this guy has to have filed a federal civil rights claim against the city. And I think he's going to get paid in this instance, Mike. I think that he is going to absolutely end up soaking the residents of Chicago for several $1 million on this one, and rightly so. I think this is truly a shambolic display, a terrible, just terrible showcase of a lack of attitude, a lack of skills, a lack of plan, a lack of understanding of when deadly force is appropriate, when you shouldn't have a gun in your hand. I am glad this woman will not be a police officer anymore. And I know there's going to be plenty of people who say, oh, see, women shouldn't be cops. I'm going to say people like this should not be cops. And every cop I know agrees the same, that people like this should not be police officers. We need to do better to help our communities and cover our ass.